my 6 kids are homeless now because of who you voted for.
America is never going to have affordable housing again, and I'm going to tell you why.
You know what? I don't even want to buy a house anymore. Even if I made the amount of money it requires to buy one.
Yes, it's true. As millennials, we collectively cannot afford houses.
New red flag in the housing market, mortgage delinquencies. It's a sign of bigger trouble ahead. That's the question this morning.
How did we get to the point in the United States where the average family can't afford the average home?
You can't afford a home. In fact, home affordability in the U.S. is the worst it has ever been.
And there it is, the American dream, officially pronounced dead at the scene. But let's be real about what killed it. This didn't happen overnight. We've had decades of policies that treated housing like a stock market instead of, places where people actually live. Local governments block new construction to keep their property taxes high. Banks profit off impossible mortgages. Investment firms swoop in with cash offers that regular families can't compete with. Meanwhile, we're building houses like they're luxury yachts. 2,600 square feet when people just need a roof over their heads. The average home in the 1950s was under 1,000 square feet and families were fine. We've created a system where housing is an investment vehicle first and shelter second. And when you do that, don't act surprised when regular working people get priced out of basic shelter. The dream isn't dead because people stop dreaming. It's dead because we let the market cannibalize itself.
There's multiple generations of Americans who can't afford to buy a house, who can't afford to go to college, who can't afford to have children.
The American dream to buy a home is dead.
Young people can't buy homes, and it's becoming harder and harder every day.
You don't have to be an economist to know that the housing market right now is terrible.
Hey y'all, good morning. I just wanted to come on here and tell you guys about how absolutely feral the housing market has gotten because
Is anyone else just done with the housing market?
This is the most unaffordable housing market that America has ever seen.
Donald Trump decided to change the guidelines for Section 8. I cannot believe this. Listen to this. This is wild, okay?
Let me just repeat that back to you. The same house that required a $100,000 household income in 2018 now needs $230,000 in 7 years. That's not inflation. That's not supply and demand. That's a bubble, and bubbles pop. Here's what really happened. We had years of artificially low interest rates that made money basically free. So everyone borrowed like crazy. Investors, flippers, anyone with a pulse could get a loan and bid on houses. Then COVID hit. Everyone decided they needed more space. Work from home meant people could live anywhere, so they flooded smaller markets with big city money. And builders? They stopped building during the recession and never really caught up. We're short millions of housing units nationwide, so you had way more buyers chasing way fewer houses fueled by cheap money. Prices had to explode. The couple in this video, both in banking, making decent money, and they still can't compete. That's not a personal failure. That's a systematic breakdown. And the cruel part? These inflated prices are now the normal that everyone has to live with.
Let's use this home as an example, which is the American dream for a lot of people like me and my fiance. We do pretty well for ourselves, we earn in the 6 figures, and we've always wanted this. But then this happened. $553,000 for this house. You may be thinking to yourself, well, that's not so bad. Let me show you. This home that was sold for $553,000, that was listed for $489,000, sold for $337,000 back in 2018. This home in 2025 with a $553,000 sale price, 6% down and a 6.5% rate, gives you a payment of $3,716. But back in 2018 with a $337,000 sale price, 6% down and a 4.5% rate, gives you a payment of $1,800. Which means to afford that home today, you need a household income of $230,000. When in 2018, you needed a household income of $100,000. Meaning that back in 2018, a couple with 2 entry-level jobs could have afforded this house. That's the issue that many people like me and my fiance are having. How is it that we have to earn more than twice as much money to do the same things that people used to be able to do just 5-6 years ago?
Since when did it become okay to overprice a house by $100,000? Since we turned housing into a casino. Look, sellers aren't evil for asking high prices. They're responding to market signals. But when houses sell sight unseen, $20,000 over asking within 12 hours. That's not a healthy market. That's speculation on steroids. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. Most of these inflated sales aren't even to families. They're to investors who plan to rent them back to the same people who couldn't afford to buy them. So, you've got working families competing with Wall Street cash. Guess who wins? The real tragedy is that young couple working in banking. They're doing everything right. Steady jobs, decent income, trying to build a life. but they're getting crushed by a system that rewards speculation over stability. This is how you create a generation of permanent renters. And permanent renters don't build generational wealth. They don't put down roots. They don't invest in communities. We're not just pricing people out of homes, we're pricing them out of the middle class entirely.
Like, for crying out loud. My wife and I both work in banking. We make decent money. We're both making 55, 60 grand a year. And these houses that they're pumping out and the prices that they're putting them at, even we can't afford that shit. Like, what the is going on here? Not only that, but houses get put on the market and they're sold within like 12 hours. So even if we see the house and we want to look at it, it says active with offer, we can't even look at it. And these houses are selling for like $20,000 over asking because it's so competitive out there, but we can't even see the fucking house. And since when did it become okay to overprice a house by like $100,000 compared to what it would be normally? Like, my goodness, I've been looking at houses that look like complete shit and they're asking like $300,000 for these houses, and it makes no fucking sense. How the fuck are we supposed to afford a house in this economy?
We can't save to travel. We scrape by our teeth to pay rent. Okay, but there is something we have accomplished that you can't take away from us. Something we did beyond measure. Now, you can look this up. This is true. We collectively spread a rumor, right? Somehow from Australia to America to England, we all got together, put our little minds together and spread this rumor that traveled, that is still spoken about today. We spread the rumor that Marilyn Manson, got his ribs removed so that he could suck his own. We did that. So no, I can't afford a house. No, I'm not happy really with the way my life is going, but I have done something with the help of my fellows. And you can't take that away from me.
Okay, this is actually hilarious and heartbreaking at the same time. We can't afford houses, but we convinced the world that Marilyn Manson removed his ribs. That's millennial dark humor right there. Our lives are falling apart, but at least we mastered viral misinformation before social media was even a thing. But underneath the joke is a real point. This generation has been incredibly resourceful and creative. They revolutionized technology, built the gig economy, adapted to economic chaos better than anyone. The problem isn't work ethic or capability. The problem is that the basic building blocks of adult life, housing, healthcare, education, have all been financialized beyond recognition. Previous generations could buy a house on a factory worker's salary because houses were priced like necessities, not investment vehicles. This generation is working harder than ever, but they're competing against algorithms and hedge funds for basic shelter. So yeah, laugh about the Marilyn Manson thing, but don't let anyone tell you it's because young people don't work hard enough.
Like, look at this house. Not too bad, right? $274,000? Yeah, well, it was $168,000. 63% increase. Fucking bullshit. How about this one? Okay, $209,900 ain't too bad. Too bad, two bath. Okay, let's see what this one is. It was $144,000. $60,000 increase? Are you kidding me? Another one, $279,900, but it's 3-bed, 3-bath. Okay. And it was $199,000. This is a joke. This has to be a joke. And this house was recently cut by $20,000, and it's sitting at about $250,000. And let's see where we're at with this one. It was at $125,000. This housing market is stupid. I'm sorry. And we don't want to rent anymore, so I guess we're going to be forced into buying something that's way more than it should be, just so a year from now the market can stabilize, and then the price will go way down, and we'll just lose our asses on our house. No big deal, right? Thanks, housing market.
And this is the trap so many people are falling into right now. They know the market is inflated, but they feel forced to buy anyway because rent is also insane. It's like being stuck between two scams. Pay inflated rent to someone else's inflated mortgage, or take on that inflated mortgage yourself and hope you don't get wiped out when prices correct. This woman gets it. She knows she's probably buying at the peak, but what choice does she have? Keep throwing money at rent forever? And here's the brutal math. If you buy now and prices drop 20% next year, you're underwater on your mortgage. But if you don't buy and prices somehow keep going up, you're even more priced out. It's a rigged game. The smart money already owns property. Everyone else is just trying to find a chair before the music stops. The system has created a situation where people have to make terrible financial decisions just to have somewhere to live. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair. Sustainable.
Let me tell you a couple of facts. So I bought a house in 2021. My interest rate was 3.025%. We loved her. We'll never get her back. She is literally a figment of our imagination at this point. I was paying $700 a month for this house. It was 1,400 square foot. I bought it for like $125,000. It was absolutely perfect. Loved it. It was remodeled, all kinds of stuff. We ended up having to move because there was a mold issue, because, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it normally is. So we lived kind of cush with our $700 mortgage until we had to move. And so we were going to buy a new house, and we literally looked at a neighborhood right down the street. Because you can't buy land. You can't buy land around here because subdivisions have all just scooped them right on up. So you can't buy land in Farmtown here in Pensacola, Florida, Milton, Florida, you know, wherever we're at. Around this area, you can't find land anymore. So anyway, so we go look at this new neighborhood, literally a mile down the road. Because if you look at old houses, or if you look at like old neighborhoods, if you try to find anything worth your time, you're not going to. So we're struggling to find houses that are less than $300,000. And I'm like, okay, well, literally these are trap houses. The floors are completely gone. We don't really know what's happening to the walls. Like, trap houses, or in the ghettos of ghetto around here. Like, I'm not even kidding. It was so ridiculous. So I ended up selling my house for $210,000.
This story perfectly captures the insanity. She bought for $125,000, put tons of work into it, sold for $210,000 and made money on paper, and still got priced out of her own market. That's the housing crisis in a nutshell. Even when you win, you lose. And notice what she said about land. Subdivisions scooped them right up. That's a key piece of this puzzle. Big developers are buying up all the buildable land, then only building expensive houses because the margins are better. Want to build something affordable? Good luck finding land that isn't controlled by some corporation with profit targets. This creates artificial scarcity. We have plenty of space in America, but most of it gets locked up by entities that only build for the top of the market. Meanwhile, regular families like hers get squeezed out of neighborhoods they've lived in for years. All that equity she built, meaningless when everything around her inflated even more. She did everything right, bought, improved, sold at a profit, and still couldn't afford to stay in her own community. That's a broken system.
The United States has enough houses to shelter every homeless person. But the problem is that the system that we've created for housing in this country has effectively ruined anyone's chance of not renting for the rest of their life. And again, like, I'm not an economist, like, I'm really just an idiot with a TikTok channel. But here's the thing. It's very simple why we're not able to own houses as younger people.
With that being said, we remodeled everything. We completely gutted it, remodeled everything. It was worth that money because we literally had to get everything out and put brand new stuff in that was very modern with the times. My dad's a contractor. Everything was great, right? It's $210,000. So I'm like, well, we could definitely live in something that's $250,000, $260,000, you know, like a little bit extra mortgage. You know, we can do it. We can do it. We can make it work. You can't find that. You cannot find that around here. And so we were looking for, what's those called? Those little modular homes that just came to me. We were looking at modular homes. Those are over $300,000 too. So I was like, oh my gosh, that is absolutely crazy. Now, these are beautiful homes, and I will say that, but then you had to find land to put these modular homes on. And of course, you can't do both because, you know, who has that type of money? So we literally found this neighborhood right down the street. Again, I'm back to this point in my story. Literally a mile down the street. So it's not like we moved out of our like income area. It wasn't to a different area of the town. It wasn't anything. Everything was still the same school districts, everything. We bought one of the cheaper houses in that neighborhood. Because hear me out, it was the best bang for our buck at this point, okay? We bought it for $360,000. We had money from our house that we put down on this. It was perfect. It was just what we wanted. We needed, like, this is going to be our home that we're going to have for a very long time. Forever home, probably not, but very long time. So we wanted to not have to do anything to the house. I did not want to remodel after our travesty of what happened last time. I wanted a yard. I wanted all of these things for my little family, right?
We own nothing. We can't build anything. We can't create anything. We can't own anything. And now there's going to be nobody to pass it all on to.
Now we're getting to the real consequences. When millions of people feel locked out of the system, they stop participating in the system. Why vote if it's rigged? Why pay taxes if none of it helps us? That's not just frustration talking. That's the foundation of democracy cracking. Every stable society needs a middle class with something to lose. When you price an entire generation out of homeownership, you're creating a population with nothing to lose. And historically, populations with nothing to lose don't stay quiet forever. Look at other countries that let housing become pure speculation. Look at the social unrest, the political instability, the breakdown of civic trust. We're heading down that same path. The older generation that benefited from cheap housing better hope the younger generation doesn't decide to stop playing by rules that only benefit people who already won. Because when you tell people, work hard and you'll get ahead, while making it impossible to get ahead, eventually they stop believing in work. They stop believing in the system entirely.
When millions of people feel locked out of the American dream, you're going to see a breakdown of civic engagement. Like, why vote if the system is rigged? Why pay taxes if none of that money is going to help any of us retire? It's not going to our infrastructure. It's not benefiting any of us. Look at Japan. Look at China. They've been investing their tax-paying money into their citizens for decades. If you go to travel in any of those countries, you're going to feel like you're living in 2050, but you're not. We're living in 1970 back here. To all the boomers out there who voted for this stuff, there's going to be nobody to take care of you. Because those of us in our 20s and 30s, we're not having kids. For what? When people have nothing to lose, they stop playing by the rules. So either give us something that we can lose, give us something to fight for, or it's not going to go very well. Long term, things are not going to get better if they don't break and stop voting against what's good for us. If the powers that be don't wake up and realize you have to give us something, because if we have nothing, it's not going to go well for you. And those of you who've been voting for this, stop.
Finally, someone who understands the fundamental conflict. This isn't just about supply and demand. It's about class interests. Every homeowner wants their house to go up in value. Every renter wants houses to get cheaper. Politicians are almost all homeowners. Landlords are all homeowners. Guess whose interests get protected? It's like having a basketball game where one team gets to write the rules, and they write them so they always win. The only way this gets fixed is either economic catastrophe, which hurts everyone, or massive policy changes that prioritize housing as a human need over housing as an investment. But good luck getting homeowners to vote for policies that might lower their property values. Even progressive homeowners get weird when you talk about actually building enough housing to make it affordable. So we're stuck in this equilibrium where the people with power benefit from the current system, and the people getting screwed don't have enough political power to change it. At least not yet.
It's one of the biggest problems we face as a country. They tell you that over and over, but they never explain why. The media is not interested in educating you. They're interested in you being mad about it. And developers and banks, they profit off you not knowing. A home that would cost you $24,000 in the beginning of 1970s, at the end of 2020 would have cost you $340,000. Now, part of that's just simple inflation. It happens over time. And natural inflation would raise the price of that home to $177,000. But that delta between $177,000 and $340,000, something else is up. And the biggest component of that is you're not buying the same house. See, all those numbers are based upon the average home. An average home in the 1950s had 983 square feet. By the 1970s, it was up to 1,500 square feet. But today, it's over 2,600 square feet.
So think about it, right? Imagine that you own a house, or maybe you're lucky enough to own a house. If you own a house, what do you want the house to do? You want the house to retain its value, or even more, you want the house to increase in value. So if you ever decided to move, that you would make a profit on it, right? But here's the problem, right? Let's say that you're like me and you don't own a house, right? What do you want the house prices to do? You want them down. You want them down. You want the housing market to crash. You want people to have to sell their houses for a penny on the dollar. And guess which group all the politicians that make the laws belong to? Guess what group all the landlords belong to? So as long as there's like that fundamental conflict between the classes in America, there's no way for the housing market to ever stabilize unless there's some kind of economic catastrophe, right?
Popsicle stick homes. Perfect description. This is what happens when builders focus on quantity over quality. They're throwing up houses as fast as possible because demand is so high that people will buy anything. But here's the scam within the scam. They're not just overpriced, they're poorly built. So you're paying luxury prices for houses that will start falling apart in 5 years. And that tax assessment trick she mentioned? Criminal. You think you're buying a house with one mortgage payment, but the taxes are based on empty land. Once the house goes up, your taxes double, and now your monthly payment is hundreds more than you planned for. It's like buying a car where they don't tell you the real price until after you drive it off the lot. The builders know this. The lenders know this. Everyone in the industry knows first-time buyers are getting hustled, but nobody cares because the money is too good. And meanwhile, People just want a place to live. They're not real estate experts. They trust that adults are acting in good faith. Big mistake.
Because there's no incentive for people to sell cheap houses. As soon as we fix that, you'll be able to get a house.
I've been looking at homes for easily the past year, almost on a daily basis. Things just get more depressing the more I look. And if you're either looking at an older home or you're looking at new construction. New construction, these are literally popsicle sticks on no land. You barely have a backyard, and these new homes are built so bad, especially here in Texas. I've watched so many TikToks on them where there's mold, there's foundation problems, there's roof problems. There's just so many things wrong with them. On top of everything else, you are under the assumption from the taxes, and that's combined into your total payment, that you're going to pay that set amount. But a lot of times, most of the time, the taxes are assessed before the home is even built on that little patch of land that you have. So once the house is on there, then you get your real taxes, which is going to be your real mortgage payment. And that's really messing people up, because these homes are already overpriced. The popsicle sticks are already overpriced. They're already not worth what they're being sold for, but people want a home. This is America. There's so much land, and the homes aren't even built well.
If you have a school-age child under 18 living in your home, okay, you are now required to work full-time, 40 hours a freaking week while they're in school, okay? Number one, they're requiring you to get a job. Number two, if you have been on Section 8 for more than 2 years, he is giving you 30 days to get the fuck out. It doesn't matter how many kids you have. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of winter. None of that matters. It doesn't matter if you have a special needs child. None of that matters. Because you should be able to work a full-time job working 40 hours a week if you have a child in school. If you have a child in school. And it doesn't matter if you have a child that's not in school. Say you have a 3-year-old. It doesn't matter. So if you've been on for Section 8 more than 2 years, I would get your shit together, because you're going to be homeless.
Whoa. So now we're attacking people on Section 8 for needing housing assistance? Look, Section 8 isn't the problem here. Corporate landlords buying up housing stock is the problem. Zoning laws preventing new construction are the problem. Investment firms treating housing like Bitcoin are the problem. Section 8 helps maybe 2 million families nationwide. BlackRock and similar firms own millions more properties. But sure, let's blame the people getting $800 a month to help with rent instead of the companies making billions off the housing shortage. This is classic misdirection. Point at the weakest people in the system and blame them for problems created by the most powerful. You want to fix housing? Build more of it. Stop letting investment firms buy single-family homes. Tax vacant properties. Create real public housing options. But kicking families out of Section 8 in the middle of a housing crisis, that just creates more homelessness, which costs taxpayers even more money in emergency services, shelters, and law enforcement. It's cruel and counterproductive.
And I was like, we can do it. It's going to be tough, but we can do it. And so we did that. And you're probably thinking, Nina, $306,000 is just a lot. You're right, it is. But if I found anything that was $320 or $330, $40, whatever, unless it wasn't worth it, unless you were in the military and had a VA loan, which I think that's amazing that they do that. That's truly awesome. Or, you know, the houses were built by not super reputable contractors in this area. And it was really just like my discernment. The Lord was telling me no on those, seriously. So I knew this was our house. We bought it. We are working hard. I mean, we do work very hard to make sure that we pay our mortgage and everything is great and stuff. I cannot imagine buying this house now, because I looked it up on Zillow, because we were just talking about how like housing rates have just like gone up astronomically. My mom is a building materials person, like, and my dad's a contractor. So we talk about this all at the same time. My dad's like, it does not cost nearly as much money as they're selling it for. Like, they are ripping everybody off, right? And my mom's the same way. She's like, we don't sell these materials for, you know, actually building materials have gone down. You know, like the industry has, you know, it's gotten cheaper or whatever with certain building materials. I'm like, what the heck? So I looked up on Zillow just for like S's and G's, just like, he, who. And My house right now went from $360,000 to almost $420,000. I'm here to tell you it's not worth it. It's barely worth the 360. What is happening? The housing market is absolutely insane. That's firsthand. That is literal firsthand, like from my own house. I'm seeing it. That is almost a $60,000 increase in 2 years. If we were to we wouldn't have even looked at this house now because there's no way we could have afforded it. Hell, it's hard to afford it now. But I'm just saying, like, this is just absolutely crazy. I don't know when stuff like this is going to end, but it's insane.
Her story is the housing crisis in microcosm. Bought at $360,000, now worth $420,000, and she's like, it's not worth it. That's the thing people don't understand about this bubble. Even the homeowners winning on paper know it's unsustainable. A $60,000 increase in 2 years on a house that hasn't changed? That's not real value creation. That's just monetary inflation hitting real estate. And she's right. If they were shopping now, they couldn't afford their own house. That's insane. Your housing costs shouldn't outpace your income growth by 5-to-1 ratios. But here's what happens next. Either prices keep going up and more people get priced out, or prices crash and people like her go underwater on their mortgages. There's no soft landing here. The bubble either keeps inflating until it pops, or it pops on its own. Either way, regular families lose. The only winners are the people who bought before 2020 and can cash out to somewhere cheaper. Everyone else is just trying to survive the ride.
All this while the number of people living in those homes is dropping dramatically. In 1950s, everybody had 290 square feet to themselves. Today, every person in the average home has 1,000 square feet. That's bigger than a home that an entire family lived in the 1950s. And that's only part of the problem, because that's livable space. The biggest growth has happened in non-livable space. In the 1950s, the 1970s, most people had carports. Today, they have 2, 3, and even 4-car garages. Those garages are bigger than the houses people were buying in the 1970s. It's not only driving up the price of the home, but all of your other expenses as well. You pay more in property tax, you pay more in utilities, you pay more in interest on your loan, in maintenance, in furniture, in cleaning.
Diana Olick joins us right now with more. Diana, good morning.
Good morning, Becky. Yeah, mortgage delinquencies are still historically low because home values have gone up so much in the last 5 years. But early this year, they began to rise just on FHA loans, which are generally used by lower income borrowers. But now we're seeing something new. In May, a significant jump in the early stage category of all delinquencies. That's 30 to 59 days past due, and according to a new report from VantageScore. They rose from 0.92% in April to 1.03% in May. Not huge, again, but an early indication of financial stress among borrowers. What's more concerning, though, is that these delinquencies were led by borrowers in the near prime, prime, and super prime segments. That is, the least risky borrowers with the highest credit scores.
So let me get this straight. We can't afford rent because rent prices are increasing so much to push us out to buy homes. But the interest rate is so high, you can't buy a home. And also you're not going to get funded for a home because of your debt to income ratio. So then what? And then homelessness or houselessness is becoming criminalized. So then what?
Exactly. This woman just laid out the impossible math. Can't afford rent because it's too high. Can't buy because interest rates are too high and debt to income ratios are impossible. And if you end up homeless, that's now a crime in many cities. So what's the solution supposed to be? Live in your car? Move back with parents? Sleep on friends' couches forever? This is what happens when housing becomes completely disconnected from wages. People get trapped in this no man's land where they're too rich for assistance but too poor for market rate housing. And the system just shrugs and says, figure it out. As if there's some magical third option that doesn't involve having somewhere to sleep at night. The honest answer is that millions of people are about to get squeezed out of stable housing. Some will double up with roommates or family. Some will move to cheaper areas and commute hours to work. Some will just go homeless, but the system will keep pretending this is normal and sustainable.
I don't understand. To be honest, I really like the idea of building a commune, aside from like the culty aspect of it, but essentially buying land, driving vans, building a tiny houses on it, and everyone shares.
And the solution is so easy, it should make you angry. No, it's not because of all the illegal immigrants who are somehow buying up all the houses. And it's actually not even these massive corporations buying up all the single-family homes. The answer is way more basic than that. We simply do not have enough homes. In basically every metropolitan city in America, there is a major housing shortage. It is no surprise that people want to live in these cities. There are way more career opportunities, which means that the salaries are usually way higher, and most people agree that the quality of life in cities is just better as well. So what's the solution? I'll tell you, it's definitely not freezing the rent, which has been shown to decrease housing supply over time. It is simply to build more houses. When there's more demand than there is supply, prices go up. The only effective way to reduce prices is to build more. And so if any politician provides any solution that isn't building more houses, then they are lying to you. The worst offenders are actually usually Democrats or liberals who engage in NIMBYism, or not in my backyard. In cities like San Francisco, there are very strict zoning laws about the type of buildings you can build. So even if there's a lot of demand for you to build more supply, you can't because the local people want to keep the property values high because they're homeowners. Prices for housing and rent in certain parts of America are actually falling. You want to know where they're falling the fastest? Texas and Florida. Why? Because they have added more units of housing than any other states by a mile. Wow, when you add more houses, prices drop. That's crazy. Wait, no it's not. It's simple supply and demand. Pressure politicians to build. The elected official with the highest approval rating in the nation right now is actually right here, the mayor of San Francisco, Daniel Lurie. And one of his most popular policies is actually enabling people to build more housing.
That guy might have an actual solutions. Build more housing. It's not complicated. The mayor of San Francisco has the highest approval ratings in the country by doing the most obvious thing, letting people build homes where people want to live. All the other stuff, blaming immigrants, rent control, corporate ownership, those are distractions from the core issue. We don't have enough housing units for the number of people who need them. When demand exceeds supply, prices go up. When supply exceeds demand, prices go down. This is literally economics 101. The problem is that existing homeowners benefit from artificial scarcity. Every neighborhood wants to stay exactly like it is. Nobody wants apartments or condos or affordable housing near them. So we get these insane zoning laws where you can only build single-family homes on huge lots in areas where people are desperate for housing. It's economic suicide disguised as preserving neighborhood character. Texas and Florida are building like crazy, and their prices are stabilizing. Coincidence? No. Supply and demand.
It's that simple.
Like seriously, when you look at the data, the average household income in the United States cannot afford you the average home value. Well, let me show you one big reason why we're in such a housing unaffordability crisis, and it has to do with the number of new construction homes that have been built since the Great Recession. When you take a look at this graph, you can clearly see that, starting from 1990 all the way to today, starting in about 1992, we were building well above the average. So this red dotted line in the middle, that's the trend line, and that's the average. So you can clearly see that starting from 1992 until about 2006, 2007, we built well above the average. Then the Great Recession started, and the 2008 financial crisis caused new home inventory sales to absolutely plummet. So we stopped building homes. So starting in 2007, all the way to the end of 2010, we saw an absolute bottom out when it came to new construction sales. And that was understandable. I mean, there was a major economic crisis going on, and we stopped building homes because companies couldn't afford it. But then when you look at what happened since then, is we never got back up to average.
I still wouldn't want to do it because it has gotten so expensive that an average house right now, if you were to go and buy it with a $120,000 plus a year salary that it would require, your payments on that house, just mortgage, property tax, insurance on it alone will be upwards of $4,000. Factor in all your other bills on top of that, everything else that goes with the house, and God forbid, nothing breaks, nothing needs to get fixed on top of it. You're looking at like $6 or $7 grand a month in just bills. Do you know how much money I would have to make per month and per year for me to ever feel comfortable enough to commit to paying that much money a month for the next 30 years? I would have to be making like $500,000 a year to be okay with that. Maybe $250,000. Or I guess I can just rent for the rest of my life, which does still suck, but at least it's only going to be like $2,000, maybe $3,000 in the next 10 years, which is still outrageous. But if something breaks, I call someone, they can fix it. Either way, owning a house these days with the price of it, way too risky.
We didn't build enough homes all the way above the average until 2021. So basically from 2007 all the way to 2021, we built well below the average number of new construction homes that we should have been building. I mean, hindsight's 2020, but we built significantly less homes than we should have been building until 2021. But then what happened right after 2021? We saw the interest rates drop to the lowest that we've ever seen, and then buyers flood the market, causing just an incredible amount of demand, and every buyer in the market was eating up all of the existing home inventory. So then we had pretty much no pre-owned homes on the market, and we hadn't built enough new construction homes for the last 14 years leading up to that we essentially had no inventory whatsoever. And when you have that much demand, you have that many buyers trying to buy a home to take advantage of the low interest rates and that low supply, that's going to cause home prices to absolutely skyrocket. And that's exactly what they did. And that's why the average family can't afford the average home in the United States anymore.
This breakdown is perfect. From 2007 to 2021, we built way below the historical average. Then COVID hit, interest rates dropped, and everyone tried to buy at once. It's like having a restaurant that seats 100 people but only cooking for 50. Then suddenly 200 people show up at the same time. The Great Recession scared builders out of the market. Many went bankrupt. Skilled workers found other jobs, and nobody wanted to take risks on new construction. But the population kept growing. Millennials kept aging into home buying years. Immigration continued. Household formation didn't stop just because we stopped building houses. So we spent 14 years creating a massive housing shortage. Then we dumped gasoline on it with cheap money and pandemic demand. The result was predictable. Prices went insane. And now we're in this weird spot where builders want to catch up, but materials are expensive, labor is scarce, and local governments still make it hard to get permits. Meanwhile, families who need homes can't wait for the market to figure itself out.
Oh my God, I love going to work and working full time and still not being able to afford a house. I love that so much. Thank you, world.
So that suggests that this short-term financial stress is possibly beginning to affect even them. And a separate report from ICE Mortgage Technology looking at overall delinquencies showed them rising 5.2% in May from May of last year, with the most serious delinquencies, those more than 90 days past due, up 14%. Again, delinquencies and foreclosures are still at very low levels. But as more consumers face financial challenges and as it gets harder to sell a home, which it is now, these numbers could get worse. Becky?
And then you're paying like credit card prices for these shitty little popsicle stick homes, which is insane. So then you're like, you know what? I'll buy an older home, which they're built better anyway. So let me just get an older home. But these boomers do not want to give them up. They literally want to hold on to them, even though the kids are moved out, there's no one there. They still want to hold on to them to their last breath. And then it's just going to end up being like an estate sale or something. And it's just crazy. I mean, you even just look at like older cars and other things that they have, and you know, it's theirs. They can do whatever they want. But I think a lot of people are thinking they can get those 2020 prices when people were selling homes, 2021, even 2022. But the market's different now, and it's the worst I've ever seen it, and it's really sad. And when you start to calculate the insurance prices too, because they keep going up, the homeowners insurance and the taxes, and then the payment on top of everything else, you're just like, I don't know. At this point, it doesn't make any sense at all.
I guess I would wonder, the last time we saw numbers kind of perk up a little bit like this?
Well, obviously, we had at the start of the pandemic, we had a lot of numbers perk up like this. But then you had the mortgage acts from the government, which backed up people, gave them moratoriums for a year or two and allowed them to get back up to speed on their mortgage payments. Before that, of course, was the Great Recession and the subprime mortgage crisis. This is nothing even close to that. But it is showing distress in the market. And more importantly, it points to distress among consumers. They do have options. They could sell their home because they have so much equity in it. But it's getting harder to sell a home now, as I said. They could also, though, rent the home because we're seeing very, very strong single-family rental demand. And they might possibly be able to rent it for more than their current mortgage payment. But again, seeing these numbers tick up is just not a good sign for the consumer.
And that's the generational wealth trap in action. His parents bought for $150,000. House is now worth $800,000. Great for them. Devastating for their kids. This is how you break the cycle of middle-class stability. Each generation should be able to build on what their parents achieved. Instead, we've created a system where success becomes a barrier to the next generation's success. The parents' equity is locked up in a house they can't afford to leave. The kids can't afford to stay in the community where they grew up. The neighborhood gets hollowed out as longtime residents age out and only wealthy newcomers can afford to move in. It's economically inefficient and socially destructive. You lose the continuity that makes communities work. Teachers, firefighters, nurses, and other essential workers getting priced out of the areas they serve. And the crazy part, the parents don't even want this. Most would rather their kids could afford to live nearby, but they're trapped in a system where their home equity is their retirement plan. We've turned housing from shelter into a zero-sum game where one generation's gain is the next generation's loss.
Possible for the average American today to purchase a home?
Absolutely not. Is it possible for them to purchase a home? Yes. Is it possible for them to purchase the home that they want? Probably not. Period. It's just that simple. No matter what you think, you're making $54,000 a year, you're single. Keep in mind, you haven't paid your taxes. You haven't paid your electricity, your gas bill, your car payment. You haven't put gas in your car. What is the expectation that the average Bobby and Susie, the average Joe, the everyday buyer can buy on $54,000 a year? There's a house for sale in Smyrna. It's $184,000. You couldn't walk in and live in it. So if you're Handy Harold, yeah, maybe you could make that work. And that's not a bad idea. To me, I don't think that the average person, single, can buy a house. And studies show, especially for the single male, that it's very difficult to achieve homeownership. That's why the majority of single people living in a home are...
So I'm just like most Americans. I want to own a home, right? But the thing about it is, the idea of owning a home is definitely an old, outdated idea.
This hits hard. Making triple minimum wage, $21 an hour, and still barely surviving with a family of 3. Let that sink in. This isn't about people not working hard enough or not having skills. Her husband makes decent money for manufacturing, and they're still drowning. And look at the comparison to her mom in 1998. Owned a house, ran a business, sent kids to private school, had money left over for family activities. All on similar blue-collar incomes. What changed? Housing costs tripled, healthcare costs exploded, childcare became unaffordable, student debt became a lifetime burden. Meanwhile, wages stayed basically flat when adjusted for real costs of living. This woman is describing the collapse of the American middle class in real time. Working families used to build wealth and security. Now they're just trying to avoid falling into poverty. And the system tells them it's their fault for not working hard enough or getting better jobs. As if there are enough $30 an hour jobs for everyone who needs them. This is what happens when policy gets written by people who haven't lived paycheck to paycheck in decades.
Let me jump into this. So what are they saying, right? The average price of a home right now is about, $400 and something thousand, right? And the average interest rate is like 6%, which means that would make your mortgage about $3,000 a month if you put 5% down. And that would include PMI. PMI is just pretty much a mortgage insurance just in case you default on your loan. But think about it. Can the average American, single person, afford $3,000 a month for their mortgage, right? Can they? Of course they can. Of course they can. Because before Corona, yes, before the virus, before whatever you want to call it, that house would be about $250,000. But because we had a influx of people bidding over certain prices, raising the price up in all markets all over America, now the price finally stabilized at somewhere that majority of Americans can't afford. Now, I live in New York City. Brooklyn, New York, primarily, right? Of course, our rents are going to be high. Our prices of homes are going to be high. But now, let's just say my parents, my dad, my mom, the people that live here, if they purchased a home back in the 90s for $150,000, that home might now have appreciated to $800,000. Now that's great for my dad or my mom and our older people, right? Because then they can retire and they can do a reverse mortgage or they can sell their home because that is their equity. That is the money they can now cash out with and retire with, right? But now their children and or grandchildren can't afford to live in that neighborhood that they were born and raised in because now they're priced out of it, right?
We've paid $9,286.32. We only have $952 of our actual mortgage paid off.
America has become a renter's nation. That's the most important line in this whole video. We're witnessing the end of widespread homeownership in America. It's not temporary. It's not a market cycle. It's a permanent shift in how housing works. When the average person needs to make $200,000 plus to qualify for an $800,000 house, homeownership becomes a luxury good. Only high earners, people with family money, or investors can play. Everyone else becomes a permanent renter, paying someone else's mortgage, but never building their own equity. This isn't just about housing, it's about the death of the middle class as we've known it. Homeownership was the main way regular families built wealth. Take that away, and you create a two-tier society, property owners and everyone else. And the property owners? Increasingly, they're not even individuals. They're corporations, investment funds, and foreign capital. So we're not just becoming a renter nation, we're becoming a nation where regular people rent from faceless entities that see housing purely as a financial instrument. That's not capitalism. That's feudalism with extra steps.
$6,000 of that, $6,423.23 has gone to interest, and $1,911 has gone to taxes and insurance.
$6,000 to interest?
$6,000 to interest. Interest rate is 6.99%.
Did you guys hear about this? There was a study that just came out that showed the average US salary versus buying a house in 2030. And I know that 2030 sounds like far off, but really it's only 5 years away. Take a look here. Some areas are requiring household incomes to more than double just to afford the median priced home. What is the median priced home? Currently in 2025, the average cost of a house in America is $415,000. And that's already a lot.
This is solid advice, but also tragic that it needs to be said. Wait until you're ready, be debt-free, have an emergency fund, save 20% down. All great financial advice, also completely unrealistic for most people in today's market. By the time someone saves $80,000, $120,000 for a down payment while also paying rent, the house prices will have gone up another $100,000. It's like trying to jump onto a moving train that keeps speeding up. But she's not wrong about being house poor. Buying a home you can't actually afford is a recipe for disaster. Better to rent and save than to be drowning in mortgage payments. The problem is, the system has made it almost impossible to buy responsibly. The ready buyers get outbid by investors paying cash. The desperate buyers overpay and become house poor. Meanwhile, everyone else just pays rent forever and watches their potential down payment get eaten up by inflation. There's no good option anymore. Just different degrees of financial stress.
But in just 5 years from now, it's going to be at $615,000. That's a $200,000 increase in 5 years. You may be asking yourself, what states will actually be impacted by this? Well, here's a map right here showing states where homeownership will pretty much be unaffordable at that point. California, Montana, most of the Northwest, and then of course the Northeast.
Boomers want to know what it's like being young in 2025? Here it is. I just got off an 8-hour shift at work where I make double minimum wage in my state. I hop in my car, check my banking app. Cool, I've got $50 to last me till next week. Then I remember, oh shit, I have to run to Walmart because the wire in my bra snapped. I don't have underwear because it keeps going missing. My eyelash curler broke, and I have no food. I bought 4 things. 4 things, and it came out to $40! I'm living off granola bars. But I hop my depressed ass back in my car, and I look at my banking app again. Oh, cool, I've got $10 now to last me till next week. I try to drive, but my car keeps misfiring. I can't afford to fix that.
This real estate agent gets it. The window for homeownership is slamming shut for regular working people. Used to qualify people making $28,000. Now, even $50,000 is borderline. Add a car payment and you're done. This isn't about people getting lazier or less responsible. The math just doesn't work anymore. And his point about waiting is crucial. Every year you wait thinking prices might come down, they actually go up more. Every year the qualification requirements get stricter. People who could have bought in 2020 can't qualify in 2025. People who can barely qualify now won't qualify in 2030. We're watching the housing market leave regular Americans behind in real time. And once you're locked out, there's no easy path back in. The tragic part is, these are the same people who do essential work. Teachers, nurses, firefighters, mechanics. We're pricing out the people who actually make communities function. What happens to a society where the working class can't afford to live where they work? We're about to find out.
So I keep on parking, turning off my car, turning it back on until it decides to act right.
30 minutes later, I'm finally heading home to my 4 roommates. I pay $8.50 a month. Now give him that's everything included, but $8.50 a month with 4 roommates. Remember back in the good old days when a man could afford to feed, raise, house his family on minimum wage? And he had a second family on the side who he also housed, fed, and raised. You know what I say to all that? You guys had it so easy, and then you destroyed everything behind you.
A lot of people in America want and need real estate prices to stay high. And let's start with the previous generation. A lot of people purchased their property for $50,000 and now they've seen it rise in value to $600,000 or $700,000. And that's a lot of money. And if we started developing it like we did in the 1960s, we would see real estate prices go down and thus their retirement would be in jeopardy. Local governments don't want this to happen either because lower property values means lower property taxes, and lower property taxes means less revenue for them to spend. A country with ubiquitous affordable housing wouldn't need a mortgage market, and thus the banks would lose one of their major revenue sources if we ever started to have affordable housing in America. If we had affordable housing and American families could go back to being single income households, corporate America would lose half of their workers.
Hold up. Now we're blaming Section 8 for creating poverty instead of, addressing the actual causes of poverty? This is backwards thinking. Section 8 doesn't create poverty. It responds to poverty that already exists because wages are too low and housing costs too high. The real cycle of poverty is when working families spend 50 to 70% of their income on rent, leaving nothing for savings, education, or emergencies. Section 8 helps break that cycle by capping housing costs at 30% of income. And the multi-generational argument misses the point entirely. If housing costs are still unaffordable without assistance, then the problem isn't the assistance, it's the housing costs. You want to end dependency on Section 8? Build enough housing to bring market rents down to what working families can actually afford. Raise wages so a full-time job covers basic living costs. But attacking the safety net while ignoring the structural problems that created the need for it, that's just creating more homelessness and calling it a solution.
Wages would have to go up, and the IRS would lose a good portion of their tax base. So what are these vested interests doing to keep us from building affordable housing, and how much of an impact is it actually having on us? It's not that it's particularly hard to build affordable housing. Here's a study from the 1960s from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics on how many work hours it took to build this typical single-family house with 1,400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Using construction methods from the last century, it would take a little over 1,000 work hours to complete the average 3-bedroom, 2-bath single-family house in the 1960s. If we were to assume modern labor costs of $60,000 per year, you would have a total labor cost of $30,000 to complete a 1960s style house if you were to do so.
People are going to lose their homes. They're going to lose their homes. I'm telling you guys, the storm is brewing and it's coming fast. Insurance premiums and property taxes are skyrocketing through the roof, and the result is that people's mortgage payments are getting higher and higher to the point that it's going to be unaffordable for most people.
I'm sure you've heard in the last 4 years that because somebody locked in a really low interest rate at 3%, that they're going to have a really low payment for the next 30 years. Most of the time what they're not mentioning is that property taxes will go up over that time, and insurance is going to go up over that time. So the mortgage is locked, but the expense on that house every month is not locked in.
This has always been the case, but the difference this time is that the rate of acceleration on property taxes and insurance is unlike anything anybody has ever seen. People's monthly payments are going up from $1,800 to $2,800, from $2,500 to $3,500. One of two things can happen. You either lose your home to foreclosure because you can't afford that payment, or you try to sell your home so that you can get out of this terrible situation. And the more people that start to now try to sell their homes, the more inventory increases, the more those prices are likely to come down. This does vary state to state, so it's not exactly the same in every state. Some states are in worse situations than others. They weren't kidding. They said you'll own nothing and you'll be
$9,000 for a refrigerator. Let that sink in. This is the hidden cost of homeownership that nobody talks about. The mortgage payment is just the beginning. Then there's the $10,000 sewer line, the $1,300 garage door, the $9,000 appliances. And notice these aren't luxury upgrades. These are basic maintenance issues. A built-in fridge breaks? You can't just buy a normal one. You need the specific expensive model that fits. This is why people become house poor even when they can technically afford the mortgage. The ongoing costs of homeownership have exploded along with everything else. Your parents' generation dealt with maybe a few $100s here and there for repairs. Now every major fix is thousands of dollars, and you can't predict when they'll hit. So even if you manage to buy a house, you're one broken HVAC system away from financial disaster. The American dream comes with a side of constant financial anxiety that previous generations never had to deal with. And unlike rent, you can't just call the landlord when something breaks. Every problem becomes your expensive problem.
I just need somebody else to tell me that they're living paycheck to paycheck and putting themselves into credit card debt out of necessity, not because of fun. I am 28 years old. I work a decent paying job. I love my job. I make good income. We have no kids, me and my fiance, and we're still barely scraping by. Our bills are paid, but we can't save any money. We can't go on vacation. I mean, we do little things here and there, but realistically, we don't really do anything. And we still live paycheck to paycheck, okay? I don't understand how people with kids are doing this. Props to y'all. I mean, seriously, the utmost respect, because I feel like I'm drowning and I only have cats. Any money that we're able to save ends up getting spent on the car, or the cat has to go to the vet, or one of us has a medical emergency. Like, it's just gone. It's gone. I don't understand. We don't live beyond our means. Are we all just collectively putting ourselves into debt because I don't know what else to do?
Today. Yet the average price for a home in America today is $430,000. So something's not adding up. But what about the material costs? Well, the materials that we use to build houses today are cheaper and less robust than what we used in the 1960s. So maybe you're thinking that the reason houses are more expensive today is that the land costs more and we're building bigger houses than we did in the past. And you're absolutely right. But why is that? It is so hard to get approval for a buildable lot in America that when we do get these approvals, we have to put the biggest, most expensive houses on there to make the development make sense. Imagine if the government put restrictions on the number of cars that could be produced every single year. You would see car manufacturers put an emphasis on the most expensive, most profitable models and not worry about entry-level cars. And this is exactly what's happened in the American real estate market. It's why for $250,000, you can purchase an entire estate in our West African developments, but you can't even purchase a condo in most areas of America for that same $250,000. And this is going to be a big problem for business going forward, because we have an entire generation that has to put up to 40% of their income into paying for a mortgage or paying for rent, which means that our consumer base is going to have a lot less money going forward, and that's not good for anyone. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that America was right to start restricting property development because of overdevelopment concerns? Or should we open things up and allow for us to build houses like we did in the 1960s?
Guys, I'm here to tell you that home ownership is not it. Real estate was great if you were a boomer back in the day and you bought your home for super cheap and the assessed value is still like nothing, so you're paying very little in property taxes.
The pain in her voice is real. She's talking about the basic necessities of life: medicine, transportation, groceries, becoming luxuries that people have to choose between. This woman can afford these things, and she knows it. But she's watching neighbors and community members who can't, and that's eating at her conscience. This is what economic inequality looks like at the human level. It's not just statistics about wealth gaps, it's watching people you know struggle with choices no one should have to make. Do I buy my prescription or put gas in the car? Do I fix the car or buy groceries this week? Do I pay the electric bill or the rent? And she's right to be heartbroken about it. This isn't supposed to be normal in the wealthiest country in human history. Working people shouldn't have to choose between medicine and transportation. The fact that she's grateful to afford basic necessities while others can't shows how far we've fallen. Basic survival shouldn't be a privilege to feel grateful for.
But nowadays, I don't think it's worth it, honestly. To give you context, I live in a house. I don't own it. My parents own it. But I help them with all the maintenance and stuff. And just from living like in a house for several years now, it's just there's constant money.
Education has doubled and tripled. Housing has doubled and tripled. Food has doubled and tripled. Yes. Unless you owned a home or owned apartment or land or assets before 2020, before the big inflation boom, you are sitting at a huge disadvantage where you're spending 70-80% of your income on things that will just barely sustain yourself. And so what the boomers are saying, you kids, what are you doing? We need to keep things the same. They look at them and say, what are you talking about?
Yes. Yeah, for the baby boomers to buy a home, the affordability compared to today, it's like night and day.
I believe the math is in the 70s, you could work a few hours a day of minimum wage and afford a Yale tuition. Try doing that now.
Yeah, forget about it.
I hate to say it, but if you can't afford a house now, the only way you'll be able to afford one in the future is if you make more money. You have to figure out a way to make more income. There is no other way.
I'll be 32 years old in May, and my family is barely surviving paycheck to paycheck. We are a family of 3, and we live off of one income, which is my husband's, who he works in a factory, and he makes $21 an hour. And I need you to understand that and let that sink in. He makes like triple the minimum wage, okay? So he makes that much money, and there is me and him and our toddler, and we are barely surviving. I have to literally stop paying certain bills. I'm a month behind at all times on my mortgage. I have all these late fees. My electric bill, I literally just have to stop paying. My credit card bill is always late. And it's like, I literally have one credit card, and it's got a $2,000 limit, and I can't pay it off. I can't pay it down. I've had to use it to pay bills, and all that. And I say all this to compare it to when my mom, when she was 32 years old, in 1998. She owned a house, she was married, she owned a car, she owned her own business, which she ran out of her house. And this was not like something she made a shit ton of money with. Like, this was just like a basic ass income with her embroidery business. And then my dad was a manager at a grocery store, and not like a head manager. Like, he ran the dairy department. Like, he only ran a single department. And they sent both their kids to Catholic school, which means they paid 2 tuitions. And like, we had enough money that like, this is when I was little, by the way, like, we were able to afford to do things and go out to dinner and get pizza every Friday night. And like, we lived a basic, normal, middle-class life up until my parents split. But my point is that, like, they were 32 living so comfortably on these normal-ass jobs. Like, my mom went to college and had a degree, but that's not what she was doing. My dad didn't go to college. Like, and now here I am, and my husband works a blue-collar, basic-ass job. And I'm a stay-at-home parent out of necessity, not by choice. We're barely making ends meet. Like, the change that has happened in 30 years.
This guy found the real solution, and it's brilliant in its simplicity. Buy half the house they tell you that you can afford. He's living on a Caribbean island because he didn't fall for the biggest house possible trap. While his peers were stretching to buy McMansions, he bought an 850 square foot place and banked the difference. The math is simple. Smaller house payment means more money for everything else. Emergency fund, investments, travel, experiences, actual life choices. But Americans have been conditioned to think that house size equals success. Bigger is always better, regardless of whether you can actually afford it or whether it makes you happy. The result? People trapped in houses they can't afford, working jobs they hate to pay for space they don't need, stressed about money constantly, with no freedom to make different choices. Meanwhile, this guy is living his actual dreams because he didn't try to impress people with his mortgage payment. That's the real housing crisis. We've confused shelter with status symbols and made ourselves miserable in the process.
And that's before you even add property taxes and insurance. Meanwhile, talk of a strong economy floats in the news, but the truth is hidden in the fine print. Trade tariffs and rising inflation are secret villains here. Tariffs on imported lumber, steel, appliances, even everyday gadgets act like a hidden tax on homes. Builders point out that new tariffs have added roughly $10,000 to each new house's price. Lumber tariffs alone are set to nearly triple soon, sending wood prices through the roof.
An $800,000 mortgage, just double it, right? I said $4,000 with 5% down, right? What did I say? That's $3,000. Now let's say an $800,000 home with 5% down. Just double it. It's almost $6,000 a month. What person can afford that, right? And that's why I sit there and I look at the idea of how you would need to make an LLC and or business, right? And that business now can get money from the banks because it's a business. They trust you more, even though you're a new LLC, right? And now you can try your best and get a hard money loan and or find a creative way of financing to purchase that home so you can rent it out to people, right? But the average person like us, of course, won't qualify for $800,000 house. Now, even though that business would need about 20% down, they can get a hard money loan for 20% down. Let you try to go and get 20% down as a regular own personal your own social security number. That's not happening based on your credit. You're gonna probably need to be making over $200,000 to $250,000 a year just to be able to qualify for that. Come on. So that's why I'm at this point of we can do whatever we want to do to try our best to overcome it, but America now has become a renter's nation. No matter if you're in New York City, no matter if you're in the Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, yes, are there places and pockets that are beautiful, right? That are calm, that are relaxed, that are away from the city life. Even their prices have went up over time. And some people just don't want to live in the middle of nowhere, like an hour away from the closest Walmart. Some people don't want to do that. Some people want to be far away from it, but even then, those prices have went up, right? So that's part of most of the frustration. So I'm going to bring it to a close here by saying it like this, right? I am one of the Americans that are sitting there saying the cost of living is just too high. Everything went up because of capitalism, once again, or just the free market. What are people willing to pay? And maybe I'll talk about it in a separate video on why just rents have went up.
A lot of people cannot make progress financially because they are house poor and they probably don't even know it. Being house poor is when you own a home that you cannot afford. What does that look like? When you have a payment that is a very big percentage of what you make monthly and all you can afford basically is to pay the mortgage. By the time you cover all your house expenses, you are basically left with nothing. I think it's important to talk about this because people are under the impression that as long as you own a home, you're winning. And that is not the case. If you are owning a home stressed out because by the end of the month, you have nothing left, you cannot afford that. That is what we call you bought too much house. With your monthly income, you should be able to pay your mortgage, set money aside, invest, basically still have a life, right? And not feel like you're drowning and not feel like you can't breathe. The biggest, smartest way to do this is waiting to buy a house when you are ready. Not when the pressure is, when are you going to buy a house? When are you going to buy a house? Oh, everyone buys a house when they get married. Why aren't you? No, you need to buy a house when you're ready. Doing this when you're ready looks like this. You should be debt free. You should have an emergency fund and you should aim to have a really good down payment. 5, 10, 15, 20% down. And that will give you margin. That will give you breathing room. That will make sure you are doing this the right way. So don't let anyone pressure you into this. Buying a house is the biggest expense you're ever going to make, at least for most of us. Make sure you're doing this the right way.
I just had a friend request from somebody that I tried to help purchase a house a couple years ago. And back then, this person's budget was probably like $170,000. $200K was the max. Interest rates at that time were like in the 3s, 4s. The husband was the sole provider for that family. He was actually pre-approved at that time. The problem was that he was not working on his credit score the way he was supposed to. He was also not saving his money the way he should have. When opportunities would present themselves, we would lose out on them because this guy was not ready. Today, if he tried to purchase a house, he would not qualify. In today's market, I can't find him what he was looking for back then. And that's really sad, guys, because that means he will probably, unless something drastic happens where he comes across a ton of money, inherits a property, he's probably going to continue to rent for the rest of his life.
The desperation in his voice is heartbreaking. 5 jobs between 2 people, 700 plus credit scores, money saved up, and they still can't buy a house without becoming financially destroyed. This is what it looks like when the system completely breaks down. These are people doing everything right according to every piece of financial advice ever given. Work hard, save money, build good credit, live below your means. And the system responds with, not enough, try harder. At what point does society acknowledge that individual solutions can't fix systemic problems? When people working 5 jobs can't afford basic housing, the problem isn't their work ethic. His question is the right one. When is the American dream going to be feasible again? And the honest answer is, maybe never unless we make major structural changes. The old model of work hard, save up, buy a house, build wealth, that's just not available to most people anymore. We need new models, new policies, new ways of thinking about how housing works. But until then, people like this are just going to keep grinding themselves down trying to achieve something that's been made artificially impossible.
How many of you guys have been waiting and now you're in a similar position? We used to qualify people making $28,000 a year. Today, those that are making under $50,000, my God, it's such a borderline qualification. You add a car payment on your debt and that's it. You no longer can qualify. Buying a house in El Paso, Texas used to be a large possibility for many, many people. Today, that window continues to close every year, and one day that will not be an option for a lot of you guys out there who continue to wait.
So there's a major update with the Section 8 program. The Trump administration has proposed a 2-year limit to the Section 8 program. Meaning, if you're on this program for more than 2 years, you're getting kicked off. Section 8 creates a cycle of poverty. You have to have an income minimum to be on Section 8. It allows people to get in this range of just getting free help that they never stop getting the free help. Section 8 was meant to allow for people to be helped in times of need, disabled and elderly. It's become a thing where people are now living and being born into Section 8 and never leaving it, meaning it's multi-generational now. There's people that have been on Section 8 since the 80s, the 90s, whereas the people who are applying nowadays now have a 2 to 3 to 4 year wait limit because the people who are on it stay on it and never get off of it.
He's absolutely right about this being morally wrong, but the blame is misplaced. That 19-year-old moving to Cleveland to buy up properties, he's a symptom, not the cause. The real problem is a system that lets housing be treated as a commodity to be traded, rather than a necessity for human life. Individual investors moving from expensive markets to cheaper ones and pricing out locals. That's happening everywhere. But it's happening because we allow unlimited speculation in housing markets. The solution isn't to shame individual actors, it's to change the rules of the game. Tax vacant properties. Limit investment purchases of single-family homes. Build enough housing so that speculation doesn't work. California's housing crisis displaced people to Texas, Arizona, Idaho. Those states' residents are now getting displaced to even cheaper markets. It's musical chairs with human shelter. The kid from Cleveland isn't evil. He's responding to incentives created by policy choices. Change the incentives, change the behavior. But she's right about the human cost. Communities get hollowed out when longtime residents can't afford to stay.
It also depends where you live, right? So I live in LA, and LA is so expensive. Property taxes are expensive. Labor to get anything work done, like with the house, is so expensive. We've had this house for like 8 years now. And in the 8 years, I will tell you some of the major things I can think of at the top of my head. So one, part of the sewer line broke where it meets with our neighbors. That was $10,000. The garage opener thing broke, $1,300. The fridge broke. And because the fridge was like a specific sized fridge, like, okay, this is like, I guess, first world problems, right? But like, it's a built-in kind of fridge. So you can't just get like a regular standalone fridge. And this was during COVID when it broke. So there was no appliances, like everything was sold out. So we had to get like a specific expensive ass fridge, which is not even that great. And that was $9,000.
Y'all, I just went today and got my driver's license renewed, my car tags renewed, picked up 2 prescriptions, and got a few groceries. To say that I'm completely broke now is an understatement. So I'm going to have to go home and start selling off my furniture to be able to live the rest of the month. I mean, that's just, it's unbelievable. No, I'm not going to, that's just, a joke. I'm not going to have to sell anything, and I'm thankful to God that I am able to do those things. And my heart hurts today, truly hurts, for people who are not able. And we're living in some rough times, really rough times. And we need to be praying for all those around us who are not as fortunate as we are to be able to do the things that we need to do. I'm not talking about extras. I'm not talking about going on vacation and doing fun things. I'm talking about living, taking care of your vehicle, if you can even afford a vehicle, putting groceries on the table, buying medicine, the things you have to do. It's sad. It's very sad.
Everything is more expensive because the homes are bigger. United States food portions are known the world over for their excessiveness, and larger portions mean larger people. Larger homes mean larger costs. Larger costs means young people aren't able to afford homes. One of the biggest financial mistakes you will make in your life is to buy the home that you're told you can afford. You can't. Buy a home that costs half of what they tell you you can afford. Figuring that out is one of the reasons why I'm able to now live on a small Caribbean island. After my divorce, I was getting ready to buy a home, and I looked at all the big expensive homes that people like me were buying, and a light bulb went off. And instead, I bought a small 850 square foot loft, and I lived in that instead at dramatically reduced cost. Because I wasn't house poor, I could then take that money and put it into my savings account. So when I came down to the small Caribbean island, I got drunk in a bar and I decided to buy property and build a house, I had the money available. So when you're sitting there thinking, I want a big home and I want more space and I want to look successful like other people, what dreams is that larger payment taking away from you? What are you giving up? Is all that financial strife and all that anxiety and all that feeling like you just can't get caught up, is that worth it?
It is literally impossible to buy a house right now. I currently work 3 jobs. My girlfriend works 2 jobs. We have a bunch of money saved up, and I still cannot buy a house. Otherwise, we'll be completely house poor. I am so sick of this. I'm so tired of it. We've been working so hard for so long. Both of our credit scores are 700 plus, 720 plus, and we're working our butts off. All we want to do is start our life, live our life, and we can't do it. I'm so tired of it. And now we find out that the money that we've been paying for taxes all this time is going to stuff that it shouldn't have gone to. I don't know how much more I can take, man. I don't know how much more I can take. Like, when is the American dream going to be feasible again? When is it going to be okay to work hard to get good things in life? With both of us combined, 5 jobs, and we can't afford a house. I'm so done, man.
Am I the only one that thinks that it is morally wrong to move from like other areas like California or Washington State, move to cheaper areas like my home state, Ohio, and start buying up all of the houses and properties and pricing out the locals? I was on my For You page and there was this 19-year-old that moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and was being honest about why he moved to Cleveland is about how he wanted to buy up all of these properties in Cleveland and be a landlord basically, and pretty much price people out of their own neighborhood. And I feel like there should be laws with this. I think like in this day and age, like that's so morally wrong. And the fact that this like 19-year-old is just being like so free and open about it, like you have to be a pretty fucked up person to do shit like that. Like be a part of the solution, not the problem. Like you are the problem of why people are being priced out of their neighborhoods. And I didn't really realize this until I moved to Tennessee.
The realtor gets it. The young people don't want to work narrative is complete nonsense when you look at the actual numbers. Previous generations bought houses with what would be spare change today. 80 acres for $100 in the 1800s. A decent house for $24,000 in the 1970s? Adjust those prices for inflation and compare them to wages, and it's not even close. Housing was fundamentally more affordable for every previous generation. But instead of acknowledging this obvious reality, we get lectures about work ethic and avocado toast. It's psychological deflection. Admitting that the system has become unfair would require acknowledging that previous generations benefited from advantages that no longer exist. That's uncomfortable, so it's easier to blame individual choices than systemic changes. The truth is, if you dropped a 1970s family into today's economy with today's housing prices, they'd be just as screwed as everyone else. The difference isn't character, it's math. And the math has changed dramatically, not in favor of working people.
But it has happened so bad in the state of Tennessee where a lot of people from California have moved here. Not only moved here, but they've invested, bought up a lot of the properties, and people can't even afford their own city anymore because they can't afford to buy a house because they're all owned by investors and big corporations. And I just don't understand why people continue to do this. It's a monopoly, and you're messing with people's homes.
We have some serious real estate news right now. A real estate shift just happened in July that nobody saw coming. Builders started making way more apartments and way fewer houses. July's housing data shows apartment construction jumped 27%, while house construction only went up 7%. Here's what's going on. Mortgage rates are still around the mid to high sixes, which means most people can't afford to buy a home anymore. The average house costs $440,000, and most people just don't have that kind of money. So what are people doing? They're renting instead, and builders figured this out fast. Think about it. Why build houses that nobody can buy when you can build apartments and houses that everyone can rent? Plus, big companies and private equity firms are buying up existing homes and even building new houses just to rent them out instead of selling them. Builders don't care about the traditional American dream. They're following the money. And right now the money is in apartments and homes to rent.
Young people just don't want to work. They don't want to work hard, and that's why so many young people can't afford to buy a home. Do you know how annoying it is for me to hear that as a realtor? Let's be very clear. A lot of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and Gen X and baby boomers, they bought their homes for fucking 13 blueberries and a handshake. I was doing some research for a video I'm posting later, and somebody bought 80 acres of land in the mid-1800s for fucking $100. That's unfathomable to me. The average home in America today is going to cost you around $400,000. Are there cheaper homes? Yes. Are there more expensive homes? Yes. Duh. But the average American salary does not align proportionally with that home price. Meaning, a lot of people can't afford to buy a home. And a lot of people never will be able to. I find it so interesting that people of the older generations are so quick to put blame onto us as the younger people, as if there is not a systemic issue at hand as far as affordability of housing goes. Nobody is saying that our grandmas and our grandpas and their grandparents, they didn't work hard for what they had. Nobody is saying that. But in comparison to where we are at in our economy and in our financial situations today, you can't even begin to make the case that this is a level playing field. I'm sorry. So if you were in a boat where, you know what, you're like, I don't know if I'll ever buy a home, and that's really disappointing, I empathize with you, and I am very sorry. I wish I had more answers given my line of work, but I don't. But just know that you are not the problem. I'm not the problem. They are not the problem. This is so much larger and bigger than all of us individually. And there are going to be people in our lives that just never will understand that.
In 30 to 90 days, some of you will be shaken to the core and snap back into reality. What am I talking about? I'm talking about you are about to be paying rent like everybody else. If you are a lifelong recipient of Section 8, you will be shaken to the core. What is happening? The Trump administration is cracking down on every single one of you who are lifelong recipient of this program. There are new directives now that not only sends guidelines on how recipients are receiving Section 8, they are telling you, you're about to start put pen on paper and send those application in, because in 30 to 90 days, you are going to have no more Section 8 and pay your rent like everybody else. So there's also new directives that the Public Housing Authority to provide within 30 days full accounting of their tenants, including proof of citizenship. Yes, that means no illegal aliens on Section 8. And let me tell you, that is the best news. I am all for people who are needing help, but these programs are meant to be temporary. So now they have a 2-year max. And if you are a lifelong recipient and have been receiving Section 8 for years and even passing it down to your kids, that won't happen anymore. Because let me tell you, there is a 2-year limit now to Section 8. If you can't get your shit done in 2 years, you need to grow the fuck up and figure it out.
And we end with the bootstrap mentality that got us into this mess in the first place. If you can't figure out housing in 2 years, grow up and figure it out. Figure out what exactly? How to magically make housing affordable. How to double your income overnight. How to compete with investment firms paying cash. This isn't about personal responsibility. It's about economic reality. When working families can't afford market rate housing, the problem isn't that they need to grow up. The problem is that the market has disconnected from what working families can pay. Section 8 exists because the market fails to provide affordable housing. Eliminating Section 8 doesn't fix the market failure. It just makes more people homeless. And homelessness costs taxpayers way more than housing vouchers. Emergency room visits, police interactions, social services, temporary shelters, all more expensive than just helping people afford rent. But sure, let's kick people out of housing assistance during a housing affordability crisis and see how that works out. This is what happens when ideology replaces policy analysis. You get solutions that sound tough but actually make problems worse.